So this week kind of marks the 1-year anniversary of the COVID pandemic. So over this past year, COVID has obviously been front and center in all of our lives. And recently, I've thought a lot about the elderly people all over the world who have been hit especially hard by this virus. The statistics of how many have died are really hard to take in. Like here in the US, we just hit 500,000 in February, which of course includes people of all ages, not just the elderly, but that number is just absolutely staggering. And I think it's important to take time to reflect on those lives. Each one a person made in the image of God with a life full of joys and sorrows that is now over, and also a person who was loved by family and so on. In that sense, I've appreciated reading bits of this New York Times series called Those We've Lost. Basically, the purpose of it is to do exactly that, to give a face and a name to the numbers so that as a society, we can at least try to comprehend the toll that this pandemic has taken. And also, was recently listening to a podcast of memorials. I think it's artists coming together to do memorials for the pandemic. What makes this all the more tragic is that so many of those who have died completely alone in hospitals, in nursing homes, and then they were not able to have the final farewell that they each deserved, like a proper wake and a funeral where family and friends can gather and comfort each other, share memories, and think back over fulfilled life. So I wanted to take the chance to talk a bit about how things work here at the Bruderhof when someone dies. And I hope this doesn't come across as too morbid, but I think it's something that can and should be talked about because death is a part of the life cycle. Just like we welcomed a new baby, you saw it, like we showed on our videos, with a lot of joy and excitement. So we should farewell a loved one with respect and dignity. And I feel like we're privileged here at the Bruderhof to be able to do that in the context of caring for each other right up to the end of life. So as I've said before, we have community locations all over the world, so we don't necessarily know everyone all that well. If someone is nearing the end of life, that will often be mentioned in a meeting so that we can pray for the person and their family, even if they live far across the globe. And then each time a person from any of our communities passes away, we all gather so that we can hear about it all together. Obviously, right now, because of COVID, everything is a bit different, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to pretend like we're living in normal times. Okay, so after a person passes away, we'll have a short meeting, and one of our pastors will tell a bit about that person's life, especially for the younger children who may not have known the person so well. So we'll sing a song or two and then pray together. And it's really not a long gathering, but then as we go about the rest of our day, it's something that, to just keep in mind. And I want to read this part from Foundations because it says it better than I could describe it. So I'll just read this. Hold on. So here goes from Foundations. Upon a death in our communities, brothers and sisters keep a constant watch around the one who has died during the time before burial, while as many as possible come to take leave. Then the church community gathers to do the last service of love, carrying the body to one of our burial grounds, cemetery, and laying it to rest in the earth until the day of resurrection. So that describes it very well, especially the phrase, the last service of love, which is really what the time around a death and funeral is all about. The wake is often held in the house where the person lived. So the room is prepared with flowers and the person is laid out very naturally and is never left alone until the funeral. A wake is usually very quiet, and it's a chance to sit, to take leave, reflect on the preciousness of life. Different brothers and sisters will take turns, and many people will come from other communities nearby to keep a constant watch, also through the night, so that it's not all on the family members. During the time before the funeral, brothers from our communities, with the help of the family, will build a simple wooden coffin. I know that for many people, the financial costs and logistics of arranging a wake and funeral are almost unmanageable. So I think that it's really special that the practical aspects are pretty much completely taken care of and the family doesn't have to worry about it at all. And they can just, focus on their loved one. When it's time for the funeral, the whole community, except like the smallest children, will gather in our main meeting room. People from neighboring communities will come as well, and as many as there's space for. So our meeting rooms, I probably said this before in my other videos, but our meeting rooms aren't set up like your typical church with like pews. So we always sit in like a circle. So at a funeral, there's a space in the circle that's prepared for the coffin. So like we'll all sit here in the coffin, sort of there. So everyone gathers, and when the funeral procession arrives, everyone stands as a sign of respect when the coffin is brought in. And for me, as a little kid, that moment was something that really impressed me. So depending on the wishes of the family, sometimes the casket is open and sometimes it's not. So that all depends on what the family wishes. The meeting itself is usually opened by one of our pastors who has a few words and they'll say a prayer, but then the family and close friends are the ones who give the eulogy. I guess you could call it that. Each funeral service takes a bit of a different form, but we'll hear of the person's life, their life story, and the important experiences, and then we'll sing their favorite songs or the ones, the family requests. Then, after that, everyone joins the funeral procession on its way to the cemetery. So each of our larger communities has its own cemetery, like right on the property. Usually, it's less than a mile from the main buildings, so there's no need for all of us to get into vehicles. So we all walk together, and it's a chance for anyone who wishes to take a turn helping to carry the casket. And then small flower arrangements are provided for anyone who wants. And in the winter, when there aren't a lot of like wildflowers around, the younger children will like make paper flowers or whatever. It's really pretty. Before the funeral, the family has a chance to help dig the grave, and this is usually done by hand with shovels and can take quite a while. So when the funeral procession arrives in the cemetery, the coffin is placed right next to the grave, and we wait until everyone is gathered around, and then there is often a committal prayer. So then the coffin gets lowered into the grave, and then they'll put fresh evergreen boughs on it, and then we'll all take turns to help fill in the grave, one shovelful of earth at a time. And this is where the phrase that I mentioned earlier, the last service of love, really plays out in like almost a beautiful but solemn way. Like when I was younger, I guess I didn't really realize that not all funerals are done like this, so I don't think I really appreciated how special this is. So then when the grave has been filled in, the family has a chance to place flowers or a wreath or a lighted candle on the grave, and then everyone else brings their little bunch of flowers, and by the time everyone's brought the flowers, looks very beautiful. And then often we'll stand around in a big circle and sing a song together, because as hard as it is to say goodbye, we also believe it is not the end. And every funeral we are reminded that we're entrusting that person to the earth to wait the day of resurrection. I know that we're privileged to be able to experience funerals like this, and as I said in the beginning, so many families over this past year have not been able to farewell their loved ones as they wished they could. So to any of you who have lost someone or who are grieving, you should know that our thoughts, our prayers, our hearts are with you and thinking of you. Anyway, I hope that this video wasn't too morbid, but it's something that I think is important and I wanted to tell you about it. So I'll see you next time.